And some people, if they keep trying that over and over again, they'll eventually figure out that that's not the way it works in Rotary. You don't just ask for money and eventually it comes. So anyway, okay, so the agenda: defining a project, completing a grant application, and then how to inspire your districts to do this. And how many of you are here because you want to write a grant? At least one. A couple of you. How many of you are here because you're a district officer, like a Rotary, like a foundation chair or a grants chair? Okay. International. Okay. That's right up your alley. Okay. You do everything. No, you don't do anything. Oh, okay. All right. You must be a PDG. Okay. Okay. The two overriding principles. You don't start the application until you know what you want to do. One of the worst things with the Rotary application is people who just start wading in and trying to fill in things, and you will fill out a section that you don't need to fill out, and it will get you in trouble. It will, because now you've indicated something which isn't going to happen on your project, and you'll get no end of questions, and people directing you the wrong way because you said something that you shouldn't have said. And it's all because you didn't know what it was you wanted to do before you started. And so how do you find out what you want to do? That's what we're going to do in defining a project. Okay, the second principle is you start with the project, not with the money. Everybody who comes in says, I've got $15,000, how big a project can I do? And I say, that's the wrong question. Go find your project, we'll find the money. And if you don't believe that, wait till we get to the end. We can find the money, we do have the money, and any project that's good enough, I don't care how big it is. No, there are some limits, but within some pretty high limits, we can do it. So those are really important principles, and if you remember those, then you're less likely to stumble sometimes, because you'll say, "Well, how do you say that?" Anyway, these are important. Okay, so the first thing is that if you want to start a project, and several of you want to start a project, is that you might say, well, what if you don't want to do your own project? Would you like to get in the easy way? And there are some backdoor ways to get into a global grant project. You can help fund global grants that are already defined. There's two partners, they've written the grant, and they're looking for money. Remember I said you can always find money? Well, this is one of the ways. You ask other clubs or districts to join your project. And when you do that, you're just putting in money. I've got another one? Oh my gosh. Well, I do have another pocket. Are you on a different channel? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, does that make sense to everybody? You can join somebody else's project. I'd say in progress. It's defined, but it's not funded yet. And that happens a lot. Okay. Then you can join Heart to Heart. How many people know what Heart to Heart is? Everybody here? Who doesn't know what Heart to Heart is? Okay, you've heard of it, but okay, we got a couple that don't know what it is. So we're going to talk about Heart to Heart. Heart to Heart is a cooperative venture between District 4170 and Zones 30 and 31. So we've got, whatever it is, 26 districts in our two zones. I think that's what it is. 26 districts in our two zones, and we're primarily aligned with District 4170, one district north of Mexico City, and we have a relationship that's at least 8 years old and growing, and we do 8 to 10 good-sized global grants a year for about $1 million a year. This is a lot of projects. And those projects are every year we're looking for clubs and districts to lead those projects. And so if you want to get involved in this effort, then the thing to do is go on the pilgrimage that happens every November. There's about 20 or 30 Rotarians who fly down there, and they get on a bus and they go around and look at all of last year's projects and see how they're doing. They're all in progress. And they look at all of next year's possible projects, and then we work together with them to decide which ones we think are fundable. Which ones do we like? Which ones do we agree will pass muster with the foundation? Those kinds of things. We go through that process, and we got our 8 to 10 projects for next year. Ron Apoon is the guy who knows the most about it, and he can fill you in on all kinds of stuff. But we've got many, many districts that are really into this, up to their eyeballs, doing a lot of stuff down there, going down every year. Tim's been down there 14 times by now. 80. 80 times? Okay, Roger's been down there a lot of times. Anyway, so, and I probably said something wrong here. You want to correct any of my numbers? I know we're expanding into another district in Mexico. There are a few things. It's continuing to grow. And it's a good way to get involved in projects. But it might still not be what you want. So, okay, you can join another club that's developing a new global grant. Let's say you want to have a global grant and there's another one around the corner from you and they're starting to develop one. You can say, can we go join you early? We want to have some responsibility as well as put in some money. And the next time you go to visit the partner, we want to go with you because we want to be a co-partner on this. And you can do that. There isn't any reason not to. And it's a great way to get in on the ground floor if you've got that situation. And the last one is that you can find a club overseas that's looking for international money, a club that's already developed a project, and there are a lot of them out there. Believe me, a lot of them out there who are developing projects but don't have a partner. And they would like to have a partner. And can you imagine why you would want to do that?
You have to get to do humanitarian service.
You get to do humanitarian service. You know you've got a partner that understands the project. You don't have to go convince them it's their project. They are already ready to do it. And what's the downside? You don't know if they know how to do projects. Right? So you've got to figure out, this is somebody you haven't met yet. They may be all ready to go, and as soon as you sign on the dotted line, bingo, they're off and running, but they don't know where they're going. So how do you find out? That's the challenge with those. And it's not impossible, certainly. We've got some references down here, like a list of heart-to-heart projects, matching grants. www.matchinggrants is a spreadsheet that's not put out by Rotary International, but it's put out by Rotarians. And it's a place where you can advertise your project. And you say, oh, that sounds like Rotary Ideas. But it's all it is a list of people looking for a partner. And there are, I mean, they've got 60 projects a year. And so if you say, well, is there a project in India? I would really like to work in India. I go there every once in a while, but I never meet a Rotary Club. And so if you feel like that, I guarantee you there's 20 in India somewhere that are looking for a project, because we hear about them all the time. Beth and I hear about them all the time. We get, and other district governors do too. So Rotary Ideas, matching grants, and then heart-to-heart projects, those are all ways to find a project. Okay, we already talked about that. Okay, now when you get through that, then some of us end up here. We say, okay, that's all nice, but we want to have our own project. And there's a couple of clubs in my own district who will say that again and again. We are saving money. We want to have our own project. We don't know where to start. And that's who we're talking to, really, primarily those people, because that's what most of this presentation is about. If you want to develop your own, what do you have to do? So that's where we're going next. Is everybody with me? Okay. So you want to develop your own project. You don't know what to do, and you don't like just jumping on somebody else's. You want to really have your own project. That's great. I just love these people. Okay, so when you develop your own project, this is the outline. This isn't filling out the application. We're not filling out the application anywhere in this. This is the outline for how to develop your own project. First is, where's it going to be? Who are you working with? What are you going to do? What's the area of focus? What are the goals? And the last piece is a short summary. And the whole purpose of this is to get to the point where you can write, this
is what I'm going to do. Right there, it fits in a little box like that. And that's the whole, I mean, we're going to talk for an hour, and that's all we're talking about is how to do that. Okay, so where's your project? Well, you can't expect it to come to you, right? So you got to have a traveler. And the kind of classic traveler is there's somebody in your club that has business somewhere or goes to another country and is interested in finding a project, would love to talk to Rotary clubs while he's in that country, and he keeps going back to the same place. And a lot of clubs have these people, and maybe several that are going different places. They got reasons, whether it's relatives or business, or they go with their church, I don't know what, but they are going to places that are potential places for projects. And so if you got one of those people, then you got to decide if they're willing to be your traveler, if they're willing to help put this project together. If you don't have that person, then you got to figure out how you can overcome this, and that's what the other part is. Can you travel with other people? How many of you have a church in your town? Okay. For those of us in Tennessee, it's a real challenge to figure out which church I'm talking about because there's 4 on every street corner, you know, and so, but if you got a church, a lot of churches are doing mission trips. Now, we aren't going to do their mission trip, but that's an opportunity to travel. And it's an opportunity to have contacts going back and forth. So if you're doing something, then there are people who are going there on the mission trip part of it. And you can say, well, I want to go with you and help you on your mission trip, but realize what I'm looking for is something similar that our Rotary Club can do. And you go there, and the mission trip might be to build housing. And you say, well, that's pretty good, but they don't have a water supply. Maybe your Rotary Club can have a project to put in the water supply for the same housing. Maybe it's not for the same housing. Maybe it's the next village over. But you're not going to be doing their project, but it might be something that's very complementary. And a lot of people get into projects with that kind of a complementary arrangement. Follow? Okay. Nonprofit organizations is another way. If you have a nonprofit that works overseas, in my club, that's how we got our first matching grant, was through the Children's Nutrition Program, which is a nonprofit in Haiti. There's a collection of churches, and they're going to Haiti all the time, back and forth, running these things to help mothers and babies and child nutrition and all of that sort of stuff. And they came to our club and said, oh, that's really great, but our wells don't work. And so we went with them to learn how to fix wells. And we ended up repairing 120 wells, and it was a really nice matching grant, good for us and good for them. And so it's the kind of thing that you can do with a nonprofit if you have one that has an overseas connection. Gets you a way to get into there is a speaker here that's too close. I don't know. Oh, I think I just need to turn it down a little. Maybe that'll do it. Let's try that. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And so anyway, it's a good way to get a relationship going when you don't have one. Other Rotary clubs might be doing it. There's another Rotary club that, like Scott's going to Ghana. And if I was looking for a relationship, I might say, Scott, when are you going to Ghana the next time? And he said, oh, I go every 3 months. And so next time, can I go with you? No reason why not. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a project for my club. We'll be glad to help you on your project, whatever it is, but I'm looking for a project for my club. So when we get there, I want to meet as many people as I can and talk to some Rotarians and stuff like that and figure out if there's a project opportunity for us. Okay. Who wouldn't say yes? Anybody would say yes. So, okay. So group study exchange. Anybody remember group study exchange? Yep. Okay. Does anybody do it anymore? Okay, well, one of the things that we've heard about recently with Group Study Exchange, well, in the first place, you know, Group Study Exchange is now funded, or if you do it, it's funded through your district grant allocation. But if you have district grant funds, you can put together a group study exchange, and you could have it specifically to look for projects. It could be a bunch of people who are going to go do the old tried and true group study exchange thing where you visit clubs over there, you tell them about our culture. You come back here and tell us about their culture. But in the, thank you. In the process, you're doing something. And in the old classic group study exchange, the thing that you were doing was vocational exchange. But you don't have to do that. You can do a group study exchange that's looking for specific projects. You go over there looking for, in some area or some subject matter, however you set it up, you can be going, you're talking to Rotary clubs, you're going through that area, you're looking for, looking for potential projects.
So Jim, this was a session I attended in Toronto. Did anybody go to the session? They had a session on this for GSE, and there was a district in California that does this every year, and they get all their global grants through this method, group study exchange. Going and staying there for 3 to 4 weeks with the folks, and you can become friends and begin to build this trust relationship. One of the things about the global grant is that both parties have to have a club in that country that works together, and you have to trust each other. Somebody's got to handle the money, somebody's got to organize the work, and so the group study exchange method sounded really good to us. We're going to try to do that in our district. We've never done that.
Yeah.
So, but it will be first through a district grant.
Yep.
So that will be, if it's $12,000, then your club will have to put in 6, and you'll get a match of 6, and your club then can go forward and hopefully have a global grant from that matching.
So all of these things can potentially be paid for by a district grant. Your district could say, we've got a big enough district grant, we can pay for the whole trip. Or you can say, like Beth does in our district, we expect the clubs to pay half of it. You know, whatever it is that we're talking about. So the district grant pays half of it. And you could do a lot of this, but we have had several people go on global grant setup trips at the expense of a district grant. You write a district grant specifically to go get ready for this global grant. Perfectly okay. The foundation likes it. So,
Especially for community assessment.
Community assessment, we're going to get to in just a minute. It's one of the next steps. But that's another thing that you can do with a district grant. Because community assessment, like these pieces, aren't part of the grant work. And so you don't put them into the global grant. It's part of your pre-work. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, second thing your traveler needs to do, or your new arrangement that's a substitute for a traveler, is find a Rotary Club partner. And it doesn't have to be in this order, remember, but anyway, you need to visit more than one Rotary Club because every Rotary Club is different. Some very wise person said once, if you visited one Rotary Club, you visited one Rotary Club. So they really are all different, and there's 100 reasons why you might not choose a Rotary Club. These are some of them. You need somebody who's active. If they say they want a grant, but they don't do anything, then it's not going to be a great relationship. And you want them to be experienced in grants. So what's their history? Particularly if they're in a place that has a lot of potential development. If they're an active club, they should have been doing global grants. And so they should have several, and you should be able to ask them to talk about what their experience is. They should be willing to work with your club, and this can be a little bit subtle. Working with your club and accepting some balanced relationship that works for you. You can get into trouble if they think that you're just a financial partner and they're going to do it all. Or if they think you're going to do it all and they're going to sit there like the king on the hill and watch it all go on and sign at the end. you want somebody who's going to have the right kind of relationship. They're going to take some responsibility and that sort of thing. And you want to have a personal relationship and a way of communicating. Communication is probably the biggest, most difficult part of all of this, but that's what Rotary is putting us in here for, because what they want is communication leading to understanding between cultures. And that's why we do global grants this way, and that's part of why it's so hard and part of why it's so fun. So you gotta kind of get ready for that sort of stuff. And then the last thing is, are the district and club qualified? You wouldn't be the first one who found a club that's been really active and you find out at the last minute that no, they're not qualified. They may be technically able to sign everything and all of that sort of stuff, but in fact, one of their global grants last year got in trouble and it hasn't had a closing report and it's overdue and the money doesn't balance yet and you don't actually know what's going on, but I'm sorry, they're not going to be a good partner for a while now. And you need to go tell them. Sometimes, and in fact, quite often that's the impetus they need to go fix that. If they want to work with you and you can't work with them if they're not qualified, then that may be a way you can help them get over the hump. Because a lot of people really do worry way too much about how do I fix that problem. It's an internal political problem for them. Somebody didn't do what he was supposed to do in their club, didn't keep the records, lost something, and they're waiting for him to fix it, and he's not going to fix it. And somebody has to pick up the slack and say, okay, we're going to write that closing report. We're going to send in the money that we have left over. And lo and behold, they're back in Rotary's good graces and everything's ready to go again. So you can help with that. You got to ask early if they're qualified.
We've done it.
We have done it. We have been there and we have done that.
Yes.
Yep. You ask RI if the district is qualified, and then you have to ask the district if the club is qualified. Yeah, RI doesn't know about the club level. They've delegated that down to the districts.
And when you say RI, you mean the foundation?
Yeah, you can ask your grants coordinator to check. I think he can just look them up on the computer and say, oh yeah. Yeah, it's a single call to the Rotary Foundation. Okay, any questions about that? Are we ready yet? No, we're not. Okay, now you got to find a potential project area. One of the things that you really want to stay away from is inventing something in order to solve a problem that you see. And so a lot of what you want to do when you're looking for a project area is look for something that somebody else knows how to solve, because you probably don't. And so you can go to Rotary through the foundation or through RI a couple of ways. You can find out what's going on in that district or in that country. What kind of projects are people doing? And if you have that problem in the area where you're working, you've got a Rotary Club and around that area, you might say, well, okay, that sounds like a good project and we got a lot of people around here who know how to do it. We can piggyback on what they're doing and get our project done a little bit easier. Local officials will sometimes have a needs assessment. Sometimes you'll have local officials that don't know how to find their office. But there's other things they don't know how to find either. But we won't go there. The local officials, if they do have a needs assessment and they say our local community here, the number one problem is schools or the number one problem is water, then that's pretty good. You're learning something. If they say, well, the main thing we need is that my house needs a septic system. Can you help me with that? Then you're learning something there too. That this guy probably isn't going to help you. and you do run into some of this. I don't know if you've ever run into some of that, but there are some people who are they've got an official position. They don't get much money, but they think that it's all about how to help their own family. And you need to figure out what's going on. What's the lay of the land? This is one of the ways you find out. Okay, so if the clubs, and that means your club and the other club, if you have ideas about what would be good, I don't know how you get them, but there you can, once you say we're going to be working in Uganda, then you can spend a lot of time reading online about Uganda and an area that you think you're working in, and you can go to the CIA. You know what you can get from the CIA? Anybody ever go to the CIA looking for data? CIA has probably the world's best database on pure data about countries. Every country in the world, they've got population and population growth and mortality and road conditions and everything broken down this way and that way, page after page after page after page of just pure statistics. And it's amazing what you can find. And the CIA does that as a public service. It's out there for everybody to use globally. And so anyway, there are a lot of ways you can find stuff. And then you can maybe find a specific population in need. You might say, well, every time we go by this one area, there's a lot of people and it looks like they need just about everything. And the local club would really like to help them. And when we drive by there, we'd like to help them too. And so that group of people, if you're in Canada or Alaska, everybody up there is talking about the indigenous people. They've been ignoring them for 200 years now, and all of a sudden everybody has said, "Gosh, maybe we ought to help them after all of this." Because so you could have a specific population like that you say that's something that we ought to work with. And the last one is about community health committees. We have found, our club working in Haiti, that the Community Health Committee is probably the most important thing when you're going to pick a community you're going to work with. Because if they have a Community Health Committee, that means they've already got people inside the community that are organized and on a track that's going to go parallel to whatever it is that we want to do. And so now you've got somebody you can ask, what's the most important thing in your committee, in your community, and those people ought to be able to do it. They ought to be able to tell you.
Do we have an equivalent to that in the United States?
Well,
is that the health department?
Well, in a city you have the health department, and I think they probably would do some of that. But I think it's more governmental. You could go to your city councilman and say, what are the needs in our city? And if he doesn't know, don't vote for him the next time. What do we got these guys for, right? They ought to know. And anyway, so I think you're trying to do the same sort of thing, but in a little rural community, the government guy probably doesn't get in there. But you have a local, it's like a neighborhood association, the health committee. It's like having a neighborhood association. Okay, now the question, who are the beneficiaries? And you'd be surprised how many people get this wrong. The beneficiaries are people, and that's the thing you have to remember. You have to focus on the beneficiaries. And a lot of people say, like I was working with the Children's Nutrition Program, and what I want to do is help the Children's Nutrition Program. I really like what they're doing. They're very effective. They're saving a lot of kids, and I can count them, I mean, that's really great. And so who's the beneficiary of your project? Well, it's the Children's Nutrition Program. Well, that's not even going to go that far. Because you have to focus on the beneficiaries. In that case, if the beneficiaries are the kids they're saving, and I'm going to work with them to help save the kids, okay, let's talk about the kids. You have to talk about the beneficiaries. Okay, so it's not an organization. It's not the community health group. You're not going to go rebuild their houses or give the community health committee water supply or anything like that. You're going to help the whole community one way or the other, or the needy people in the community. So can you count them? When you finally get around to having a grant application, you're going to have to put down how many are there. Who are the beneficiaries? And it's not everybody in the community, because everybody won't benefit. Whatever it is you're doing, you got to say, well, 3/4 of the 1,000 people in this community are going to benefit by this, and so our beneficiaries are 750 individuals in this community. That's good enough. That's the level of detail you need. And then you got to say, what do they need the most? Not do they need what you want to give them, but what do they need the most? And the reason that happens is because if you go to Haiti, and I know because I've seen it, if you go in there and you start giving away refrigerators, the people will line up 100 deep and they don't even have electricity. If you're giving away something, they think you're smart enough to give them something that's valuable, and they will lug that refrigerator home on the back of their donkey, and then it'll sit there and they won't know what to do with it. So you got to start by figuring out what it is that they need. Okay, so how do you do that? You perform a needs assessment. Have you ever heard of a needs assessment? Are you afraid of the needs assessment? You can't be. No. Well, a lot of people, this is a new requirement, right? Oh no, another requirement. Okay, it's not so bad. And so let's talk about the needs assessment. Am I behind?
We've got 10 minutes.
Oh, no problem. Needs assessment, needs assessment. Here it is.
Here, let me do it.
Okay. Everybody take one of these because you might want to scribble all over it. When you do a needs assessment, you want to work with a club. You want to involve the health group if you got one. You want to select a project after you go through this process. You're going to say, here's the top 3 needs in our community, and the first one is jobs. And you may say, well, that really may be their biggest need, but we're not in a position to be able to help them with that right now. And so what's their second one? They need a school. I think we could probably do that, but schools are pretty expensive. Does it fit our financial situation? Maybe we aren't going to be able to do that. We could only build, with a global grant, you could only build what's called a simple school. If it's a big enough community, it might need more than that. Simple school, 2 or 3 rooms. That's the only kind of school that the foundation will let you build. You can, where did I leave it? You can do things with a school that's already there, like equipment and books and things like that. But if you're going to build a building, the foundation doesn't like to spend all of the money building buildings. So anyway, it might be their third priority, could be the one that you end up doing. And that fits right in with the way the needs assessment works. You don't have to do their top need. You have to pick something that is an important need for them. And eventually, you'll get down to the bottom and say, what needs didn't you satisfy and why not? And you probably have a reason. Okay. Okay, let's talk about the needs assessment. I think this will work. Opening, okay. Okay, so you got a copy of the needs assessment.
Gave them all out.
You gave them all out?
Yeah.
Oh.
This lady has an extra right here.
I got extras. Here, do you need more? These aren't stapled, but they're extras. Give me one. I think I got 5 more. 3. Okay. So going through the needs assessment. Who's the beneficiary? Where's the community? That kind of stuff. So you put in that. It doesn't look very hard. A few questions. Who's going to actually receive the benefit? Which group? So I'm going to work in this community that we call Erlanger in Haiti, but who is the who is the group that's actually going to benefit? I have to take my coat off.
I'm glad you have an assistant.
Thank you, Vanna. Okay. Okay, and it asks you things like who's involved, and we already said who you want to involve, so that should be pretty easy. But the idea is that this is just taking you through this process. There's another document that'll give you lots of thinking about how to get started, but it really isn't that hard. You get together some people and you say, how do we ask what's important here? If you've got a government person that's involved, you can include them in the assessment. You want to include the community health group? That's good. We did an assessment in Dominica. Somebody went down with the idea of helping them with disaster recovery, because after the big hurricane that came through, I think it was 2 hurricanes 1 week after another, the whole island fell apart. And one of the problems was they didn't have any water. And so somebody who knows plenty about water went down there and said, well, we're going to find out ways to put in water stations, water purification stations, where people can go and get water if the general water system all fails, which it did, because they lost power and nothing was pumping. And so nobody had, even though everybody had a water tap, nobody had any water. And that was the idea for this project, to make the whole island more self-sufficient, more sustainable when they had any kind of a disaster. It doesn't have to be a hurricane, but something that happens that would knock out a lot of their systems. What they found out when they started talking to people was that that wasn't their highest need. And it still ended up being something that the project is working on, but their highest need was to have their community support groups, like the rescue squad, trained in how to rescue people, because they had a rescue squad, but they didn't have any training. And there were a lot of groups, medical and other kinds of groups, that were established but not trained and equipped in order to deal with the kind of stuff that goes on. Disaster, but the training is stuff that you would use a little bit every day. But it's one of those things where, or a little bit every month. But if you don't have the equipment, you make do, and somehow it's okay, and it doesn't become news until you have the really big one. So they ended up with a project which is the grant's being written now. And you want to guess what area of focus it is? It's not water. They started out thinking it was going to be water. It's not water. It's in peace and conflict resolution. Because the way we think of peace these days is about the pillars of peace. And one of the pillars of peace is institutions that maintain your society. And that's what this is all about. And so it's a peace grant in order to avoid the second disaster after the first disaster.
Jim,
Interesting.
Why is the Rotary Foundation making us do this now?
Why are they making us do this?
Well, maybe because we had a bunch of projects that weren't the top priority?
Oh, yes. There are a lot of ways you can get in that. Yeah, you can definitely get into problems where I would call it technology push, right? And this is one of the things you're trying to avoid. You're in your Rotary Club, and somebody comes in as a speaker, and he says, "Hey, I've got this great new thing. It purifies water. See, you put the water in here, and it comes out clean out the bottom." And he does it again and again and again. He says, "Looks great. Do you know any place that needs these?" "I don't know, but we'll find a place." And you go off looking for somebody that wants these things. And if you go to Haiti, I guarantee you they'll take them. Okay, it may not be what they need, but if you're peddling them, they'll take them. Yeah. Anyway, so Rotary does want us to do this, and I think I told you when you get down to the end, it's not very complicated, but you get down to the end and it says, which things did you not do, and why did you choose not to do them? So. It takes a little while. It might take, depending on the situation, it might take a day or it might take a week. If you have a well-defined community and they've got a good community health group, you might go and say, "I want a meeting with you, and I want to meet all day, and we're going to do this. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about why, and we're going to go through a process where everybody talks. We're going to decide what the community's needs are." And they may say, "We already know." And I say, "Okay, we're going to go through a process anyway to make sure that we all agree on what it is." And that's fine. When you get to the end of that meeting, you may be done. You write it up. That would work fine. And there are other places where you need to do focus groups here, there, and the other place, and go around twice to get everybody's input on where you end up. Okay, so now you know who the beneficiaries are and you know what their needs are, right? Okay, now let's talk about area of focus. I have one page on area of focus. Pass that out. The area of focus guidelines, there is this policy statements. Has anybody seen the area of focus policy statements? Okay, a few people. All right, for those of you who haven't, this is a very, very important basic document. It's, the thing I'm passing out is just 2 pages out of it, but it's only 11 pages long. And so there's about a page and a half on each of the 6 focus areas. And the one I gave you is the one on water and sanitation. When we get to the end of this, if we've got all of your names, I'll send you this, and all of these links on the presentation go straight to the RI website and pull these documents. Okay, so the policy for water and sanitation says this is what we will pay for. These are the goals that you have to pick from. Okay, so the statement of purpose is we Rotarians want to ensure that people have sustainable access to water and sanitation. You can do it with these 4 things. The last one is about career-minded professionals. That's the Global Scholars Program. You can have a global scholar for water and sanitation. And the other 3 are you can provide safe water, improve sanitation and hygiene. You can provide it to the people. Or you can strengthen the ability of the community to develop it themselves, which might be better. Or you can support programs that just train them, about what's the benefits of using it. It might be that it's available, but it's a little bit farther away. And there are just thousands of stories about people who have put in a well for people who get their water out of a polluted river. And the culture tells the people that the river is the source of life, and they will continue to go to the river even though you gave them a well that has clean water. And they'll take that clean water that you gave them and they'll put it on their crops. And it ought to be the other way around, because you haven't done this. You haven't created the awareness of what the difference is. You got to get a microscope out and start showing them what's in the water, right? And if they see some of those bugs, maybe you can convince them. And in a lot of places, you need to convince their kids. And once you've convinced their kids that those bugs are icky and they don't want to drink them, then maybe you can convince the parents. Yes, these will show up in the application, because when you get to the application, you have to pick a goal. And so what I suggest is that you take this document, this 11-page document, and you figured out what you want to do, but you're not even sure which area of focus it's in. It might be here, or it might be there, or it might be somewhere else. And so go through there with a highlighter and highlight everything on every page that sounds just like what you're going to do. And if that's something that we're going to touch, and that's something that we're going to touch, and then you can go through and say, okay, which page has the most highlighter on it? And now you can maybe pick out your area of focus. Because many times you can have a project that does one thing and it does a little bit of something else. Okay, so I'm going to provide clean drinking water for this community. It's going to provide water, so it's water and sanitation. But it's also going to help with maternal and child health, because everybody gets sick because of water, right? And it's going to help with education, because the kids are going to stay in school. They're not going to be sick. And so it's going to help. We've got 3 or 4 areas of focus, and I want to claim all of those.
No.
Oh no, don't do that. No. Sometimes you can claim 2, and you really should, but most times you want to only have 1. Okay, and the reason, let's go ahead and talk about that. The reason you want to only have 1 is that if you pick 3 areas of focus, then you have to pick goals in all 3 of those areas of focus. And you have to do enough on that goal that the foundation considers it significant. And so if you say, I'm going to affect maternal and child health, then they're going to ask you before you get started, what is the child mortality rate? What is the maternal mortality rate today? And what are you going to make it with your project? Okay, you're going to provide clean drinking water. How much impact are you going to have? Do you know? It's kind of hard to tell. But if you're going to say, I'm going to provide clean drinking water, and it's going to go to 450 people, I can count that. I can, and that's what you need. So that's why you pick the simplest one, and that's what you deliver.
Jim, the whole issue of impact is going to be featured in the next iteration of our strategic plan. Over the next 5 years, we have to do a better job of measuring our impact on this kind of thing and other things we do in Rotary, because if we're going to get other partners like Gates
We have to have
to
impact.
help us, we can measure the impact, Jim, pretty well. OVO, we've done a pretty good job, but for organizations to give us money, we have to do a better job of measuring impact. And impact means how have we changed lives in a community,
Right.
right?
And one of the reasons the goals are focused, and when you say areas of focus, they are focused. One of the reasons they're focused like this is so that you can roll up the impact. If you say, I am going to provide water and I'm going to provide education, then the foundation will get to the point where they are asking you in the application, how many people are going to get water, how many people are going to get education, and they're going to roll that up with all the other projects in water and be able to say to the Gateses of the world, this is how much our impact was. Okay, so the next section is about parameters. And in some of the areas of focus, there are both positive and negative parameters. You can do these things, you can't do these other things. But these are all just limiters. So all of these things are within the scope. Access to water, supply, quality, access to sanitation, improved hygiene, watershed management. That's an interesting one. It comes under water and sanitation. If you want to prevent runoff of soil, that's watershed management, and that comes under water and sanitation. You might not have thought of that at first, but that's where it shows up. Water for production counts under water and sanitation. That fits a little bit more logically. But anyway. Okay, so in every one of the 6 areas of focus, you can find exactly these same, obviously different restrictions, different goals, but goals and then the parameters. Okay, so I mentioned it's best to have only one area of focus, and you want to pick specific goals you're going to be aligned with. And so you do that with a highlighter, and you pick your area of focus, and you hopefully have only one. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So now this last thing. The order of steps really isn't that important. There were 6 steps we went through, if you remember, starting with where you're going to be and who you're working with and what you're going to do. And there are times where you're going to start with one or another. For example, you guys are familiar with Heart to Heart, and in that process, the partner is the last thing that you find. You make the connection pretty much after the rest of this is all put together, because the host club puts together the beneficiary and the goals and the area of focus, and they present it to the, maybe not completely, but they present it to the visiting people coming from the US, and then you start putting together the partnerships. So the partner is kind of loosely defined when you start, but not specifically defined. So you got to go through these things, and you need to review them and go back around. And all you're doing is going around a loop, because every time you work on one, it might change one of the others. And so you review this, but you haven't written a whole lot down. You've done a needs assessment, and you've met with some people, and you've established some communication, and you've done a tremendous amount of work, and you've figured out what it is you want to do. And now you take the last step. In the last step, you're going to write a 2-sentence description of what it is you're going to do. And in 2 sentences, you can say all of these things, the 5 or 6 things. And so here's an example. I made it up, by the way.
Nobody ever does
Well, the Rotary Clubs of Cleveland, Tennessee, USA, and La Paz, Honduras will partner to provide potable water to the high school and surrounding community in La Jamani, Honduras. By providing a borehole well, pump, and water tank on the school property, they will serve about 4,000 people who don't have access to potable water. Okay? End of story. What can you tell when you read that? Okay? Who? Where? What are you going to do? What's the area of focus? It shows up right in there. What you're going to do is in the last sentence. Who are the beneficiaries?
How many?
How many? All the basics are right there. And when we get into the next section, you'll see that one of the most prominent sections on the application is something where the foundation says, please give us a short description of your project. And don't go into detail. Short description. Please don't go into detail. And you take this and you put it right there. And then when the foundation readers open up your thing, they're going to look there first and they say, oh, I'm so happy. Because people want to start their grant by saying, once upon a time, a long time ago, a member of our club did, and you start with writing a novel, you know? And so the very first expandable box, you just go in there and you just start typing away all the things you think are so great about what you're doing. And those poor reviewers, they can't stand it. Anyway, so you want this to be short. Should it be short? It should be short, yes.
You got it.
I think 2 sentences is great, okay?
Just want to be sure. That's what I was here.
There are times where a grammatical review might say, let's make it 3 sentences, you know, but you got the idea. I didn't have any trouble getting it in 2 sentences.
Taking pictures of the screen. Could you just email this?
I will as soon as I get everybody's email. I will absolutely email it to you. Okay? All right, so at this point, we're halfway through. How you like that? It's the end of part 1, and you have defined your project, and we're going to take a break and start again in like 12 minutes. How about that? Okay. Because maybe we got started a little late. I'm sure I was right on time. Anyway, so let's take a break, and if you got questions, I'll be here and Beth will be here. We can talk about this all you want.